Hello, and welcome to the Soundwave Podcast. Music, technologies, stories. For people who love the art and science of listening to and enjoying recorded music. Here it's all about the art and magic of sound reproduction and related human stories. We survey music, technology, and stories from the early beginnings of relatively low high fidelity to the heyday of the 70s high fidelity and the modern age of digital and streaming. I'm your host, Pat Shepard. Before the holidays and the Holiday Cheer episode, we looked at the vinyl renaissance and the reemergent interest in vinyl records, and that the digital age has not rendered vinyl obsolete, but has faced a renewed interest across generational boundaries. So, if you just pulled out your old vinyl collection out of storage, or inherited a vinyl record collection, or stumble upon some records at a yard sale, you might be wondering if you've got a treasure trove of valuable vinyl. Today, we're going to look at what makes some records more valuable than others. We will explore the fascinating world of vinyl collectability and the unique culture that surrounds it. Vinyl records are not merely functional mediums for playing music. They have become coveted artifacts treasured by collectors and enthusiasts worldwide. We will then look at some of the topmost collectible and valuable vinyl of all time and how to assess their worth. Then we will look at some of the records that might more likely be in your collection and what to be on the lookout for. Last episode, we talked about some of the things that make the vinyl record experience so special. It was the appreciation for all the work and effort that was put into both the record and the album cover. Records from popular eras are usually more in demand than others. You can identify the record's age by reading the liner notes, the text printed on the sleeve. Vinyl records from the 50s and 60s are very collectible. These records are from the golden era of the vinyl record timeline, made famous by great musicians throughout history, such as the Beatles, Jimi Hendrix, James Brown, Bob Dylan, only to name a few. Old 78 RPM records from the 20s can also be collectible. These records feature the earliest recordings of American jazz, blues, and rock and roll. Rare examples like Elvis Presley's That's All Right, Blue Moon of Kentucky have sold for thousands of dollars. However, there's a common misconception that vintage always means valuable. Although older records are more desirable, many vintage records sell for less than $5. That's because there are other factors, such as condition and rarity, that also affect the value. Valuable records can be worth much more than the average price, which typically hovers around $20. For example, rare copies of Bob Dylan's The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, with 4 unreleased songs, have sold for as much as $35,000. This episode will help you identify some hidden gems in your collection. Vinyl records can be valuable if they possess certain characteristics. The artist. Records by famous artists like the Beatles, Prince, Etta James, Stevie Wonder, and Bob Marley are more collectible. Early releases before an artist's fame, such as Al Green's Backup Train, can be exceptionally rare and valuable. The pressing. First pressings, cut from the original master recordings, are highly sought after due to their superior sound quality. These are often more valuable than subsequent pressings or reissues. The age. Records from the 50s and 60s, like I've mentioned, and even the 20s are highly collectible. Condition. Records in better condition, graded from poor to mint, typically, command higher prices. Very good plus or near mint records often fetch above average prices. As in anything with collectibles, if it's in mint condition or unopened condition, you can always demand a higher price. Rarity. Rare records with limited circulation, including out-of-print records, picture discs, imports, and limited editions, can be very valuable. Some records became rare due to being destroyed or withdrawn from the market, like Prince's The Black Album. Uniqueness. Autographed records, sealed copies, limited editions, promo copies, colored vinyl, picture disc, imports, and test pressings are all factors that can add value to a vinyl record. To determine if your vinyl records are valuable, you can use online databases like Discogs, which is short for discographies, to research special catalog numbers and get price estimates. Hire a professional appraiser, particularly if you have a substantial collection maybe you've inherited or found. Visit your local record store where knowledgeable staff can help you assess the value of your records. By considering these factors and utilizing these methods, you can gain a better understanding of the worth of your vinyl record collection and potentially discover some hidden treasures. Now let's talk about the 6 most valuable records of all time, according to an article on HMV, a British music and entertainment retailer. Number 1, Wu-Tang Clan, Once Upon a Time in Shaolin, sold for $2 million. The infamous and until recently incarcerated Martin Shkreli paid a reported $2 million for this 2015 album, of which Shkreli's copy is the only one produced, making it the most valuable and rare vinyl album to date. Shkreli, the controversial former CEO of Turning Pharmaceuticals, hiked up the price of his company's anti-HIV drug by more than 5,000%. Because of this, he was sentenced to 20 years behind bars, although he was released in 2022. Although he got out early, the terms of the buyer's agreement stipulates that the buyer, Shkreli, may not release the album for profits for 100 years. However, he is allowed to release it for free of charge. Number 2, the Beatles' White Album was sold for $790,000. As one of the Beatles' most famous LPs, the band's drummer, Ringo Starr, owned the first printing of this album from 1968. With a printing number of 000001, the second most valuable vinyl record in history was sold at auction in the United States for $790,000. Number 3, Elvis Presley, My Happiness, was sold for $300,000. As an artist who loves vinyl records, Jack White is also one of the most prolific musicians in his generation, and in 2015, Jack White bought the test pressing of Elvis's first recording for a reported $300,000 at auction, making it the 3rd most valuable record of all time. Number 4, the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, signed by all 4 Beatles, was sold for $290,000. Celebrities aren't the only ones getting in on buying some of the most valuable and rare vinyl records in history. Sold for more than $290,000 at auction, a buyer in the Midwest bought an original 1967 pressing of the Beatles' most iconic album. Number 5, John Lennon and Yoko Ono, Double Fantasy, sold for $150,000. One of the most valuable vinyl records sold is also part of the biggest tragedies in musical history. Of course, any vintage pressing of Lennon's music would likely catch a fair price at an auction, but this one sold for $150,000. Also happens to be a record that John Lennon himself signed just hours before he was assassinated. Number 6, the last one, the Beatles' Yesterday and Today, sold for $125,000. If market trends are any indication, anything the Beatles release only seems to appreciate in value. But it's not just the age of this release that makes it so valuable. This compilation album is one of the rarest vinyl records in history, having only been released in the US, Canada, and Japan, but not the UK or Europe. It also featured the band's so-called Butcher cover, with the 4 bandmates inexplicably draped in dismembered doll parts and raw meat. As you can imagine, this cover art was immediately recalled and replaced with a much more commercial bit of artwork. But those are the big hitters, and there are plenty of everyday nuggets that you might find in your collection, such as the Beatles' White Album, being released in 1968, An original UK pressing of this iconic double album featuring the individual numbers on the front cover is highly sought after, depending on its condition. An original white album in pristine condition can also command prices of over $1,000 or more in a collector's market. Number 2. Another sought-after valuable collectible is Pink Floyd's The Dark Side of the Moon, which was released in 1973. This groundbreaking album is often praised for its sonic excellence and innovative packaging. Early pressings with solid blue triangle stickers, indicating the inclusion of posters and stickers, are particularly valuable. An original pressing in excellent condition can fetch prices ranging from $200 to $500 and even higher. Number 3, moving on to jazz, John Coltrane's A Love Supreme, released in 1965, is an absolute classic. First pressings with the original orange and black impulse. Record labels are highly sought after and very desirable among jazz collectors. An original mono pressing in top-notch condition can reach prices upwards of $500 to $800. And finally, number 4. The world of collectible vinyl is not limited to vintage releases alone. Even modern pressings and limited editions are highly sought after. So, for example, special releases for Record Store Day, where artists offer exclusive vinyl editions, can create a frenzy among collectors. Prices for these limited edition records can quickly soar well above their original retail prices. For some, the vinyl renaissance has turned record collecting into a treasure hunt, with enthusiasts on a quest to find rare editions, limited releases, and cherished classics. Collectors thrive on the thrill of discovering unique pressings and searching for hidden gems. Remember, the true value of a record is your connection to it. Do you enjoy the history of the record? Do you especially enjoy the cover or liner design? Did you go through a lot of stores to try to find it at a good price? And are you particularly fond of the musical and emotional feelings you get from it? I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe and tune in next time. All content except where noted is copyright Pat Shepard and thesoundwaveshow.com. Be sure to go to thesoundwaveshow.com to look up references that I used to create this episode. The theme song is something I put together in GarageBand. Happy collecting! See you next time.